Harold is kind of stupid, but he's stupid in the best way you can be. From this Elbath flashback, we see that he has the best intentions, but he goes about it in the worst ways possible. And I know as readers, we know more than the characters. We know that working with the world government is wrong. And it's kind of tragic, like, most One Piece backstories are, that the cost of his hope was to be enslaved by the same organization that he thought would bring his country, peace, growth, expansion. And of course, we won't know until next chapter what exactly happened, like what was his true fate. But one thing is for certain is that Harold attempts to join the world government by abandoning his culture for others didn't save him. And I have to say, Harold's failure is one many cultures throughout our history have done. And I feel the following stages are what Harold himself has been through over the flashback. And they are as follows: bartering, separating, isolating, conforming, and eventually disintegrating. So when we start the flashback, the first thing that happens to Harold is, of course, Ida smacks some sense into him and makes him realize that just because humans are smaller doesn't mean that they don't have value. That we all, as human beings, as different races, have value to one another. And this kind of begins the bartering stage where we see a level of mutual respect and relations going on between Harold and all these different nations. Then we start to see Harold's journey of diplomacy, where he is again bartering the value and skills of Elbath to bridge the gaps between nations. This being the best stage culminates in multiple allies helping Elbath during their famine. Now, of course, during this time, he's definitely not focusing on things at home. He's super focused on building these relationships, and that's his true purpose. And, if we were to look at history, we can compare this bartering stage to, when, explorers find new civilizations, when the conquistadors found the Aztec Empire, when the colonizers of America end up meeting the Native Americans. And it begins with a mutual relationship, but eventually this unison ceases into the next and one of the most crucial stages, separating. So Harold, of course, faces a wall by the world government who steadily refuses to hear him out. This begins the first form of separation Elbath faces through power. The world government is the epitome of might is right, and with how much influence they have. Harold first faces this when he finds Cypherpole agents attacking an allied nation. It seems like they are enslaving those people. And of course, Harold acts out violently against this because he understands that this is wrong and he doesn't care about the system at this point. Now, this is when, the immediate result is propaganda spreading through news about said event, spreading fear about King Harold. Oh, King Harold, this giant king, has attacked a world government ship, kind of breaking all the work that he was doing through his diplomacy and partnering and visiting all these nations, right? And then there's a second level to this, right? So, of course, Rox ends up coming in the picture, and the world government uses their power of separation to break apart this possible alliance between Rox and Harold. Rox is very well versed in the history of the world, it seems like, and he understands that the power that Harold has, he should not be groveling to the world government. Even more so, there's plenty of hints from Elder Jarl and even other, events that are happening in this time that the world government is not someone that he should trust. And no matter what he does, he will not get what he wants, right? So Rox is one of those people who challenges Harold, but eventually the world government sees this unison as, of course, a threat. And, Harold, with his blind pursuit of wanting to help his people, is manipulated to fight his own friend, to kill his own friend for the sake of his country. And this, again, separation, very clear and decisive separation when it comes to, struggles of power. When you separate forces against you, when you make those forces fight one another, you're weakening them, and you can come in and clean swoop and take full control. And that's what the world government is doing with Harald at this point. So eventually, this separation of power leads to isolating. So Harald is isolated, right? He's isolated with the grief of losing his friend Rox, that he regrets that he didn't help Rox when Rox asked him to. He's also kind of pushed to follow his path even more so because his pride, his mission to save his country is inherently the reason why Rox dies, because he didn't want to support him, right? So now he's pushing forward, lost his closest friend. Now he can't falter. He has no reason to falter. If he falters, his friend Rox's death means nothing. Him sacrificing his friend means nothing. So this leads to Harald submitting fully to the world government, which leads to the next stage, and the part that makes us as readers very annoyed with Harald is when he starts conforming. Now, he takes it to the extreme, right? He goes to the world government Marineford HQ and rips his horns out and pleads to the world government that he will be a slave. He will bear all of the sins of his people. And this is where, again, we're seeing Harald not appreciate his culture. Harald is inherently saying that his people are bad based off of the majority's perception of them and what they say about him. Harald is taking on all these things, and he's letting these little minute moments or the past dictate the future. But Harald, again, he is not that example anymore. Of course, Harald has done bad things in the past, but this is no reason to conform or placate to the demands of the world government. And eventually, of course, we see that Harald, in his conforming, becomes a tool for the government. He is being further exploited than he already has been, to where he's destroying these pirates. Mind you, he's doing this in the darkness. He's not really revealing his identity. So anything he's doing doesn't help the merit of the giants. And it's funny, when he initially pled his sovereignty, his body to the world government to be a slave, the way that Emu reacted is someone who knows that they have them in their hands. And if we go back to the God Valley flashback and you see Emu interacting with Harald, Emu has already had this in his plans. He's already been watching Harald. He's been seeing what Harald has been doing and see how he's weak and how he's going to eventually manipulate him. And Harald just falls into his hands with this conforming, right? So he thinks he's become accepted by the world by using his power to upend their enemies. But little does he know, again, Emu's intentions are to enslave him and make his people remain as simple warriors. And this is a thing that, if we look at the history of the world, a lot of cultures have tried to do this. Like, for me, I'm from, Georgia in the United States of America. The Cherokee people, the Creek Nation in Georgia, tried to placate to colonizer needs. They tried to cross that border. And in their conforming, they just lost the plot, right? They never saw that. These people never saw you as human beings. And this is what the world government is. They don't see Harald as a equal. They see Harald as a means to an end. And this eventually ends with Harald finally taking that pact with the devil, sealing his fate with Emu when he becomes an official God Knight. And this leads to the final stage of disintegrating. And of course, I love how before we even get into this, Ida on her deathbed kind of calls out Harald's extreme idea and how he's kind of throwing away and forsaking his culture. Harald is, of course, prideful again, right? He rationalizes by saying, well, our culture is the reason why we couldn't get married. He's trying to argue something, but that's still not relevant to what Ida said. Ida is saying that you lost your pride. You can be educated and also still be a warrior, have the pride of your culture, right? That shouldn't be two polar opposite things. Now, eventually, we even see Jaguar D Sol, another giant who's from the outside, who works for the world government, who's seen the power of the world government in O'Hara, which is something I'm curious if does Harald not does he not see these things that the world government is doing and the way that they will destroy anybody who's in their way? You know, it's weird. Harald is a very contradicting character. He does these radical things like saving Jaguar D Sol, having the library of O'Hara, at least the remnants of it, on Elbath. And sadly though, at this point, it's too late. Harald has become a knight of God and signs a pact he has no idea that entails him in submitting fully to the world government and disintegrating his power. Now, we won't see where this goes. I made this before, next week's chapter because we were in break week this week. I'm very curious in what happens next. We know that he ends up dying, and the power of Elbath, the relationship that they have with the world government seemingly goes out the window. They become even more isolated. But this is the failure of Harald. And in the wake of your failure, even in the last chapter, Harald is calling on Jarl and Loki. You need your children and the people who are warning you to save you, but it's already too late. And I won't go into detail. It may be another video about how Harald did not handle his business at home and how he inherently neglected Loki. Like, he's going to world government talking about, now that I've become a god knight, I'm going to give the throne to a pure of heart giant. What? Are you serious? Oh, other than my emotions, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am Skipper Roy. This is my first video. Look forward to more content. If you like it, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and like the video. And please, I would love to hear your opinions on Harald's failures. And even if you feel I was kind of wrong in my staging or how I'm organizing this, please forgive me. I didn't get to do as much research. I feel like this video would have been a lot longer if I did that. So thank you for watching and look forward to more content, especially this week. We're out of break week. Let's go. See you guys next time.